What's up, nerds? Welcome back to the Pickleball Pursuit podcast. I'm your host, Lewis, here with some guy that just decided to join us this episode. Just kidding. Our co-host, Justin. What's going on, man?
Hey, not much. Glad to be back. I watched last week's episode without me. It was entertaining. You did a great job.
Oh, dude. I thought you were going to roast me.
Nah.
Well, we're all extremely disappointed in you for leaving us high and dry and having to make everyone listen to me for an hour.
I think I was the one high and dry. I was like 7,000 feet elevation in the desert in Utah. So, speaking of, I actually really love a dry climate. I miss it already.
I was in my super hot and humid Louisiana office.
Yeah, I hear you. I got back to Texas
in my life,
and it said the darkest. I got back to Texas and it said the weather said 98 feels like 111. And I was like, oh, great.
Yes.
Meanwhile, when we were there,
today.
when we were there in Utah, it would be like 94 feels like 92, which is just because it's a dry climate. And, everybody there was like, oh, it's so hot, I can't take it. And I was like, if you only knew,
If you only knew, you bunch of babies.
Yeah, this is classic. This is what all the people who live in the humid South say. Oh, so.
Yeah. Well, I just got back from the beach, so, I shouldn't be complaining. I had a really good vacation with the fam, so it was tight. But you been playing much, man?
I played the last 2 nights, yeah. First time, back. Hadn't played in over a week while I was gone.
What paddles did you use? Anything?
No, I've been locked in. I've been locked in on my 1X because we got the tournament coming up. I have some stuff I need to try.
You've been dialing it in.
Yeah, I have some stuff I need to try. I actually have 2 prototypes in the bag that I need to work on, but I'm trying to get dialed in, so honestly, it makes a huge difference. You know this. If you switch paddles all the time, it makes a large difference on your consistency, but if you can just stick with one paddle for 2 weeks, massive difference. So
I'll tell you what, if I'm barely a 4.0 right now, but if I played with the same paddle, I'd probably be a 4.1 easily.
Well, that's actually kind of a big difference, So for my sake, stick with the same paddle, at least for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, that is the curse of playing with a bunch of paddles, but, it's all good.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of nursing I don't know if it's a knee injury. Oh, sorry, guys. I bumped my mic, but I had like a big old string of muslin from my diffusion right here on my leg. But I've been kind of like nursing like a knee injury type thing. It doesn't hurt at all when I play. Like zero. I feel great. And then I go home and like sit down for an hour and my stand up and it's like my knee is so tight, especially on like the back of my knee. And I've been looking up. It's very like common in meniscus injuries, which would suck.
I was going to ask, are you getting your preemptive excuses for our tournament? You just getting them in now?
No.
You said it doesn't hurt while you play,
I feel great when I play. Yeah, I feel great when I play, so we're good.
In between games,
if we lose, it's because we suck, mainly me.
No excuses,
but if we win, it's because I'm a savage and,
that's fair.
Got carried by you.
No, I'm just the right side guy. I've been trying to dial in my right side play, right side patterns. That's what I've been doing the past 2 days. I'm like, I won't speed up a single ball. I'm going to reset everything. Just watch.
Yeah. Well, that'll survive 3 points, and then you're like, Lewis, get your ass on the right.
That'll be good. I'm really actually pretty curious. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Louisiana left and a Texas bench player, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But, been nursing this little annoyance. Should be good. Haven't played a ton, but I have been continuing to play with the J3K Pro. So
okay, all right. So you are sticking with one paddle for a while.
Yeah, I've been hitting that a lot. Hitting the new Mavericks Clash 15 Power Pro and All Court paddles, which are some unreleased paddles that are coming out soon. Been hitting the Fat Boy, and then a couple of new Groovin paddles, which have all played well, but all of those have been very sparingly.
Right on.
But yeah, I just did the top 5 paddles under 100, which a frickin' Mark Pure couldn't be on there because it's discontinued. But
I know. We made it last year, didn't we?
Yeah. No, you didn't.
Oh shit. Well, Well, we've been on some kind of
Shit,
video
yeah.
like that at some point. You can't win them all, okay?
Yeah, you can't win them all, but you can definitely lose. That's for sure. I can tell you that. You can definitely lose.
So what was on
Believe
your
me.
list?
Well, I had a different list than usual. I had a couple of paddles that could have easily made it, which was obviously the Vatic Prism Flash and the Spartus Gladius Centurion, but there was a couple of paddles that were new to the market that felt pretty damn good, were a little cheaper, or a lot cheaper in the case of my number 5 paddle. And just, I wanted to have like a, I don't know, I wanted to showcase more paddles and
Yeah.
more options because people can easily go back to that. And that last video I made is still, just as good. It's, 6 months old and not like much has drastically changed in the budget paddle market. But I think number 5 was the Kiwi Lab 00 Start, which is I think it's like $54 after discount code. It's
That's
14
crazy.
millimeters. It's an elongated paddle. It has like their new enhanced raw carbon fiber texture, which is like super gritty.
Yeah, there's no
It gets
reason.
really good spin.
Yeah, there's no reason to buy like an Amazon paddle or like a Target paddle when
No.
stuff like that exists.
No.
You should go straight
this
for that.
paddle,
Yeah.
like straight up, if you have played pickleball more than one time, and you're like, "Yep, I want to play this once a week or whatever," this is the paddle to buy. Just straight up. Don't go buy a $35 paddle on Amazon.
And probably not
You're
a
wasting
$200 paddle either.
$35.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely do not buy a $200 paddle. I don't really think anybody should be buying $200 paddles at this moment, and the lack of durability with paddles. But yeah, great paddle for the price. A little less ideal in terms of like premium feel. However, you're paying a budget price for a paddle that this probably would be $120 a year ago.
That's
Maybe
crazy.
more,
Yeah, makes sense though.
And so it's a pretty solid paddle. Number 4 was an interesting paddle from Standout, which is an RC2. This one's 13 millimeters. I'm sorry, I misspoke in my review. It's not 14, it's 13 millimeters. Another elongated paddle, Aero Curve, little less head heavy, definitely more premium feeling. Still has some exposed polymer, as it is only a Gen 1.5 paddle. I assume they don't go down to the handle with the edge foam, which is why you can feel that exposed polymer. And just a much more premium, nicer feeling paddle, and performs a little bit better just in terms of feel, not necessarily in terms of performance. So Standout Pickleball RC2, I think it was $85 or something, $90 after discount code, Pursuit 10. And then number 3 was a very unique new paddle that I haven't seen anyone review, except for one person, which is the A11N Zenith C8. This is a standard shape paddle. It's thermoformed. It uses 3K carbon fiber, which in my previous experiences has been one of the worst surfaces. But this one actually was pretty solid. I'm not sure if it was the surface itself or just the combination of grit texture that they utilized on the last 3K paddles that I've used, but they all sucked. This one, pretty damn good. Super soft, super plush for a thermoformed paddle. So if you're looking for uber control oriented paddle that doesn't break the bank, this one's $80. Gen 2.
I really like the woven surface. I mean, of course, you know, it matters what the layup is. What are the layers underneath? The last one you played with, you said you hated, might have had, not an ideal layers beneath the woven. But yeah, I tend to actually really like a 3K woven. Of course, we're seeing it a ton with carbon Kevlar 3K woven. But in general, like even the 18Ks you see like on the Shapeshifter and the Diadem and other woven surfaces there. And then the fact that, sorry, I'm off on a little tangent, but people have been talking about the difference between Kevlar and carbon fiber faces, on paddles that are otherwise the same. And of course, they are two different materials, so they do have slightly different feel. But I actually think a lot of the difference in feel is the fact that one is a unidirectional, the carbon fiber, and one is a woven face. So even if you built the same paddle with unidirectional carbon and then 3K carbon, like that A11N, you'd probably experience
Yeah.
a lot of the same differences as you would from carbon to Kevlar. So I think the feel difference has more to do with woven faces than
Yeah.
the material. But
One of
it's a little
the
tangent.
definite, very noticeable things that I've noticed with the woven faces is they feel significantly more plush and feel as though they have a little bit more dwell time.
Yeah, which
this
is
is not
more
necessarily
spin.
the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the case with the shapeshifter because it does have a layer of carbon fiber and I think it's a unidirectional layer of carbon fiber under the 18K, and then under that they have a layer of fiberglass. So
Yeah.
a little different, unique feeling paddle on that. But another Kiwi Labs paddle came in at number 2, which is the Kiwi Labs Slice. This was not a paddle that I was going to review, but as soon as I saw Larry drop the price, I was like, oh, like that is a stupid
What does
good
the price
paddle.
go down to?
Oh God, I think it's $85.
Under
as well.
$100. I got a
under
slice story.
$100.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah,
actually.
go ahead, man.
One of
Let's hear
our so when that paddle first came out, I've said this before about this paddle, and I told Larry this. I love that shape, like such a smart shape because it's technically a hybrid shape, but it kind of feels a little bit more standard. So great shape, plays like a standard, but also plays a little bit like a hybrid. Anyway, all that said is this was before I was working with any pickleball companies or anything. I pre-ordered that when they first released the Slice, and I played with it and I really liked it. But at the time I was doing a lot of reviews, so I never played with one paddle for long. One of the local guys I play with, shout out Jeremy, I passed along the Slice to him, and now he's had it for I don't know what, a year since it launched or whatever. And he's saying, it's kind of wearing out because paddles do. And he was like, man, I love this paddle so much. And I was like, well, get another one. They're not even that expensive. And then he was like, I want to help you out. Let me get one of your paddles. And I was like, all right, cool. So I've let him demo every single Mark paddle, and he always goes back to the Slice. So so it's kind of like, he's like, I want to get one of the Mark paddles, but I don't like them as much. And he feels so bad telling me every time. I'm like, dude, it's okay. Different paddles for different people. Man. So
100%.
He loves that paddle, but
yeah.
I keep telling him, I'm like, just buy another one. It's not that expensive. I didn't know it went on sale even more. I need to tell him now. Honestly, I'll text him after this, and he'll probably pick one up because it's a perfect fit for his game.
Absolutely. And just to kind of echo what Justin said, just because I like a paddle or a reviewer that you watch likes a paddle doesn't mean that you're necessarily 100% going to like it. So always keep that fact in mind that paddles are very personal. And not everybody is going to agree with everybody on what is good or great or something that they enjoy playing with. So great point to add there. But this Slice, man, they're new. It's not T700. It's just like some type of raw carbon fiber layer that they use, and the new grit that they put on top of it is very gritty, and it gets exceptional spin.
Well, that's really good. I think that was the weakness of the first one. I don't know if you ever had the first one, but it was almost like waxy. It felt smooth, and the spin was not great.
I never had it. So no, this one's very similar. Feels kind of like almost like the Volair texture, or not quite like the Mark Pure texture, but like that kind of roughness.
Okay.
It's very intriguing and interesting, but it's like a very consistent roughness. Like it's like almost like a patterned roughness. If that makes sense? But
yeah, I know what you mean. Like the Pro
great
XR
paddle.
paddles. Have you felt the Pro XR
I never
paddles?
play with Pro XLS. Yeah,
yeah, they have an interesting kind of unique sort of. It's similar to Volair, the grit. It's really good.
Yeah. I've heard good things about Pro XR paddles in terms of grit and spin. But Kiwi Slice, awesome paddle. Larry dropping prices, and probably killing it on sales right now. So number 1 was like a 3-way tie. Oh shoot, my bad. Was the J2 J2H? Yeah, that's not it.
Oh, surprise! Surprise!
Surprise!
It's
My J3 is
again.
Somewhere around here. Oh, yeah, here it is. God dang. That's not it.
Just don't worry about it. It's okay.
Mega fail. I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4. I can see 5 Honolulu paddles just on the ground
course
right
you
now in
can.
my office. But anyway, J2H, J2, J3 were the joint first place. They just dropped the price on all of these to $99 or $95 after discount code PB Pursuit. All these paddles are very, very, very solid performers. This J2 shape is the most stable hybrid shape that is currently offered on the market. And they're all just really good paddles. The J2H is like very poppy and powerful for a hybrid shape paddle. The J2 is just like a really consistent all court paddle. And then the J3 is just like such a great standard shape paddle. I played with that as my main for a very long time. Before I switched over to the J2K and Kinetic, kind of went between those two for a long time. And then now I'm kind of stuck on the J3K Pro. But anyway, yeah, those were my top 5 paddles under $100. I expect there to be more and more paddles creeping below that $110 to $100 price range. So I think we will see more and more paddles that are top level performers. But a bunch of really good ones. The first 2 are more of those kind of like entry level paddles, whereas the standout pickleball paddle is not necessarily entry level, but it's still it's Gen 1.5. I don't think that's as desirable as the other 3 or technically 6. Actually, technically 5. I can't math other paddles. But anyway, so yeah, I would have loved to have had the Mark Pure on there, but you know, it's all good, man. It's all good. We'll see what happens. So yeah, man, that top 5 was definitely something that I felt like a lot of people would go back to more and more and see. But some interesting topics. I don't know if you saw this on the Discord, but people have been saying that the rubber bands on some specific paddles have been causing like massive amounts of vibration.
By people, you
This
mean
is
me.
something. Oh, that was you.
There's
You were
me
the first person who
and-
said that?
Nah, probably not the first, but me and one other person have said it now for over a year, and everyone said we were crazy.
Damn.
And then a couple paddle owners came out and be like, "Nah, this is real," and then reviewers have said, "Nah, it's real." It's like,
Yeah,
why
you're
would we have
definitely
made
crazy.
that up? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that annoying whenever you say something that you're like, hey guys, I noticed this, and everybody's like, no, you're an idiot, dude.
Yeah.
Shut up. What do
There
you
was so
know?
many times people were
Oh,
like,
you
"Man, I'm
make
getting
paddles for a company?
Yeah." People were like, "I'm getting weird vibrations." I'm like, "Hey, move the rubber band or take it off." And they'd be like, "That sounds like a crackpot theory." And I'm like, "Okay, you could just try it though." You know, it's not always the case, but
Yeah.
essentially, what we're talking about here is like the grip band, the rubber bands on the top of the grip, and if you put it too high, then it can essentially stretch from edge guard to edge guard and kind of hover. And when you hit the ball, it'll vibrate like a guitar string, but it doesn't feel like
As
that.
you
It
can
feels
see the
like, yeah, it
rubber band
almost
right here.
feels like your paddle is broken or like it's getting some weird vibration. You're like, what's going on? And anyway, the reason that this is pertinent right now is because there are a couple companies that have come out with some like more thicker, firm rubber bands, and the vibration from those is a bit harsher and more noticeable.
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
one of those things
you
that may
can
never happen to
literally-
you, but yeah.
I'm just like pulling it and letting it pop, and you can feel like the vibration go all the way down the handle. What's funny is I've never noticed that because I almost never play with these rubber bands. I mean, I have like a
Yeah, I take them off too.
graveyard of bands on my, because they're just annoying. They get in the way. There's no point of having them. They already have, these have grip tape on the top. So I mean, and I over grip 99% of the paddles that I test and review. This one just happened to have a grip that didn't really bother me in terms of sweaty hands. So
Oh, yeah, I tend to
I
take them
never
off too.
noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But very interesting thing. So if you are noticing some very interesting or weird vibrations specifically in your handle, and you have your grip band on there, go ahead and just take it off. You don't necessarily need it. It's not anything that makes the performance of your paddle better. Potentially could make it worse. So very interesting topic that, how did you notice that? Just from prototype testing
Just
or
dicking around. Just One
Yeah.
day I was hitting with a paddle that I had hit with so many times, and it started vibrating. And I thought it was broken, but I, had just regripped it, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I know. I just randomly noticed it. So,
Yeah.
and then I'm not the
It's
only one.
funny
Like I
how
said,
stuff
other
like
people
that
have said
shows
that
up.
too. And it was just one day, and then I was like, oh, is it? And I was like, no way, it's this. And then I scooted it down a little bit, and it stopped happening. I was like, that's crazy. Didn't think of it again until somebody online was like, oh, this is happening. I was like, hey, try this, and they were like, you're an
Yeah.
idiot. It would never be that. My paddle's
Very
broken.
interesting.
So,
Hey, bro, do you have a Building Pickleball shirt on?
oh yeah, shout out Brian.
Oh, shit.
This is the new shake and bake drop. Sold out already. So
Nice. Yeah.
keep on wishing.
Tight shirt.
Yeah. The back looks better.
If you
but
don't
I'm
know
not gonna
Building,
turn around.
yeah, it's a Building Pickleball. He's a YouTuber and podcaster. Makes really good content.
Yeah.
Primarily like focused on like the performance side of pickleball for his YouTube channel, and then interviewing
lot of
different people in
interviews.
the pickleball space.
Yeah. Solid channel. Love
very
that channel.
insightful. Very. You can tell Brian puts a tremendous amount of effort into his interviews. Great channel. Go check it out.
Yeah, he's a super
go
nice guy.
subscribe to his. Yeah.
We got to
Yep,
meet him in Dallas.
Definitely.
And he was like very kind,
Yep.
very humble.
Yeah. He seems like a really good guy. I would love to pick his brain about MMA because I'm a huge UFC fan, and
Yeah.
I know he used to fight MMA, so it's very intriguing to learn about that because I don't really know many people who've done MMA, and I love the sport. It's very
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, so a couple very interesting things have happened recently. The most really just being that UPA-A made an announcement, I think it was a week ago, that they are going to start charging an exorbitant amount of money for paddle companies to be approved and, sanctioned for their tournaments. So I'll kind of just like say my thoughts real quickly because I know people are probably way more interested in yours. But it definitely seems a little sketchy. Seems like a big time money grab, and it's very interesting that they have all of the brands as board members or whatever
Advisory
on their
board,
advisory board members on their equipment advisory and how things are going to get shape in terms of approval and whatnot. So, and all of those are the largest pickleball paddle
I have the list in front of me right here.
Yeah. And they're also the richest, and they have the most capital to burn, and it's very much a, hey, let's monopolize this sport and make it similar to tennis.
Yeah.
So won't put any words in your mouth. Those are my thoughts and only my thoughts. Justin, why don't you go ahead and tell me kind of how that plays into Mark and just y'all's thoughts and feelings about that.
Yeah. So,
or maybe yours, not really
yeah,
yours.
yeah, definitely. Disclaimer: these are just my thoughts.
Yeah.
Can I go into the context a little bit, just for those maybe who haven't been following this? Okay.
Yeah, you can go deep if you want, man.
So yeah, this isn't technically Nerd Town, but it might be a bit of a soapbox, kind of like Nerd Town is, right? So anyway, you said it, the UPA-A. The UPA, by the way, just for the players in the field here. They are the umbrella company that owns the PPA tournament and the MLP. They also own Pickleball Central, which is the largest pickleball retailer, and they own pickleballtournaments.com, which is like, the largest kind of organization for amateur and pro tournaments that you would go to online to check it out. So massive corporation, a big umbrella corporation that's had some very rich owners, Dundon, he used to, or he may still actually own part of an NHL team. That's where he came from. Anyway, so it was on May 16th, and this is right in the middle of all the USAP stuff. They announced the UPA-A, which they said is going to be their approval body for paddles, in the same way that you see all the USAP approved paddles right now. So just as a contrast, the USAP, our current approval body, is a nonprofit. So they don't have any ties to these different companies. And so that's like it's very dichotomous between the two, UPA and USAP. And what Lewis was getting at is UPA now announced their advisory board, and their advisory board are these companies: Franklin, Gearbox, Yola, Onyx, Paddletech Pro XR, Selkirk, Vulcan. So those are all pretty much the title sponsors of the PPA Tour, which makes sense. It's the same company, right? UPA PPA Tour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the players involved, right? So now the announcement you're talking about was actually not an official announcement. There hasn't been an official announcement yet. However, there was a tweet from Rob Nunnery, and then other sources also leaked the same thing. Basically, it said that whenever the UPA does their approvals, this is what they're going to come out with. They're going to charge paddle brands, companies like Mark Pickleball, $100,000 per year just to be eligible to have paddles approved, and $5,000 per paddle registration starting in 2025. And that throughout 2025, USAP paddles will still work, but moving into 2026, you need to have UPA approval, right? And that $5,000 per paddle means per model. Like, so each paddle model will have to cost $5,000 every time for approval. This is significantly more expensive than USAP, which is about $1,500 per paddle model. And then there is no $100K per year, of course. So the $100K per year is kind of the offensive part. $5K per paddle, okay, you know. And they kind of out and out said it's because there are too many new brands coming in, small brands, they're flooding the market, and it's like tainting the waters or whatever. So they want to make a bigger barrier to entry for small brands. I don't necessarily think they mean small brands like Mark and Chorus and, you know, Kiwi Labs, etc. I wouldn't say that they think that. I think they would probably say like more like the Alibaba catalog brands. However, the result is still the same thing.
Yeah.
So Jason Aspis, he's the president of UPA. He actually tweeted back to Rob Nunnery and said that always happy to have these conversations. But that's not quite the whole story. He said UPA is still working hard with the best engineers to determine standards, regulations, and how to best monitor and enforce them. There will be a cost, still TBD. And he said the same thing on a Facebook post too. So they haven't confirmed the 100K per year and 5K per paddle thing. And hopefully, I think that was definitely their plan since it got leaked from multiple sources. But I'm hoping that with all like the backlash and everyone hating it, they're like, whoa, yeah, that's not our cost. Our cost is lower. Right. So anyway, okay. So that's the context. So my thoughts as a paddle company, it's hard to say right now because there hasn't been an official announcement, right? But let's just say hypothetically it comes out as approved at 100K per year and 5K per paddle. I think that's what happens with the USAP lawsuits right now and the YOLA lawsuit is going to be really telling, right? Because right now YOLA has a class action lawsuit in progress, and then the lawsuit against USAP, and it's all kind of tied together, right? I think because the class action lawsuit is claiming so much high damages because their paddles aren't approved, YOLA then sued USAP for an insane amount of money, basically $200 million in damages. However, if USAP and YOLA are able to settle and put those paddles back on the list, then the class action kind of goes away because now people can't claim damages for having unapproved paddles or fraud or etc. So what happens there is going to define the landscape a lot. I guess there is a world in which they don't settle and this lawsuit essentially bankrupts USAP, and then USAP dies and can't survive anymore, in which case we'd have to rely on UPA as the, you know, kind of governing body for approval of equipment. If that's the case,
assuming that YOLA has a leg to stand on in court.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's all hypothetical, right? The other way is, you know, YOLA loses the lawsuit, so to speak, or whatever, or USAP survives, right? So USAP survives. I think that they're still going to remain the like de facto approval body, and most brands are going to look to work with them, because, you know, another important piece is that this new UPA governing body, they said they're only approving paddles for pro play, right? And it's got to be over like 99.9% of pickleball players, even tournament players, are amateur level. They're not pro level. So they wouldn't require this UPA approval. But UPA did say in 2026 they're going to start targeting amateur. So basically there are too many, you know, pieces waiting to fall in place for us to say for sure. But just off the rip, 100K per year sounds insane, especially for a small brand. It's like we just couldn't do it, you know. 5K per paddle, like I said, maybe that's not as offensive. That's not really going to stop anybody from making paddles and improving paddles. Maybe you would a smaller company would look to say, oh, we can only have 5 releases this year instead of 8 releases, because we have the budget around that or something like that. So we'll see what they come out and say. But this whole pay to be a member just to even have the chance to be approved at a high cost is pretty crazy. Not to mention the fact that it feels a little, I don't know. It feels bad that it's the clearly for-profit company that owns the tour that's now trying to govern it as well. I don't know that in any industry that works out well, or if that is just, late-stage capitalism at its finest sort of thing. So,
yeah.
Anyway,
I was very much a
typical,
ignorant, optimistic person whenever they first announced,
Yeah.
And then very quickly did I learn that was, just not even remotely, having the best interests of other people in mind.
Yeah. Also classic by me to just rant for 10 minutes and say literally nothing. That's like
nothing.
I've gotten crap with the comments now 3 times for non-answers, but I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah.
So get over it.
Nothing. Don't answer anything.
Yeah, but talk a lot.
But yeah, that kind of brings it to like 2 things. Like number one, like this is totally just my opinion, but I'm certain that the larger brands are threatened by smaller, more innovative brands
that price their paddles a lot lower.
They make better paddles that are also cheaper. So it's ruining their brand credibility. And I don't want to say any names, but there are for sure companies out there whose paddles that I've tested, and every single one of them is barely outperforms Gen 1.5 paddles.
Yeah.
Barely. And they cost $250.
Yeah.
And they are not innovating in any way, shape, or form. They are creating, paddles that are, it's almost like they're giving them a facelift, if you will. That's really all they're doing.
To play devil's advocate,
there's not really.
The larger brands, of course, have more costs. They do a lot more advertising. They do a lot more supporting of the tour and Pickleball TV, et cetera, et cetera. So they then price their products higher to cover all these other costs. Whereas smaller brands, it's like, we just do a little bit of advertising and focus on making good products. Anyway, I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that's the devil's advocate view.
That is a good point, but also every single other performance sport, even the biggest players, are making the most innovation.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Nike and soccer cleats, they make the most innovation in soccer cleats.
Just look at tennis. There's no small brands just like making better rackets than the big companies.
Yeah,
you're right.
But isn't there also something similar to what they're doing right now that prevented from smaller brands even to do that?
And I don't want to see pickleball go in that direction, at least not yet, where it's like, oh, you play with one of these 4 or 5 brands or it's garbage. I kind of love that there are 30, 50 different brand paddles that you could play with that are good. Like you could have a good paddle from any of those brands, and then it's a very competitive market, but it's also fun to see which small brands can kind of differentiate themselves and succeed in this sort of like wild, wild west, very competitive mid-level market. Of course, I thrive on that because I want to be one of those brands. We'll see, but it's just cool to see who kind of the cream rises. As long as everything else is in place. Yeah,
and the second point I was going to make is they kind of allude to the barrier of entry. The barrier of entry is too easy. And I would honestly agree with that. I would. The barrier of entry is too easy, and I think a lot of that has to do with factories just being very easily, hey, here's some samples. You can make these and sell these. We'll put your brand on it. That's all you need. Just give us your logo.
Do you get those emails?
Yes, I get those. I get messages on Instagram from, just random accounts. They're like, "Hey, we're a factory in China. We can do
not,
blah, blah 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 blah."
Yeah, that's a middleman.
And right, that's an agent. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, y'all just send this to anyone who has pickleball in their name.
Yeah,
100%.
But
it just goes to show that
you get even more.
It's very easy to get into it. Very easy to get into it. So I do think that the barrier of entry should be raised a little bit, but not to the point where it's suffocating startup companies. I mean, maybe there
Yeah.
needs to be a little bit more of initial investment and capital that needs to be raised to start a pickleball company.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that it is what they are doing. I will just straight out say it is wrong.
I think they overshot the
yeah.
mark with 100K per year, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand like exactly what you're saying. Let's, kind of cut out the chaff and like only serious brands remain, because you have to make a real investment if you want to stay in the space. But 100K per year repeating.
Yeah.
And
I think
the
it should
thing
be a
is,
50K entry fee, and then
a lot
Your
of
grandfather in, if you will.
companies would pay this. So if they want to do it and they just stick it, it'll happen, and a majority of the companies will just pay it. And the big companies,
Yeah.
it'll be no problem for them. But I think a lot of the small, based on what I've heard from a lot of other owners, I think a lot of the small companies would even just like bite the bullet and say it's the only way to try to stay in, and they will just pay it, thinking that
But
cutting a lot of the other
there's
competition would help them.
There's so many that would only be beneficial to them if USAP dissolved, like
Yeah.
they were no longer if they were still around and still a governing body for all other non-PPA tournaments. I don't think that everybody would be like, yeah, let me go ahead and just pay $100,000 for this UPA-A.
Yeah, I wonder.
Like, I feel like the
if it'll
PPA is not that, especially for like small and mid-sized brands. Like none of they're not going to have pros playing in PPA. Like not
Yeah,
everybody has
most.
sponsored pros,
Yeah.
so they don't have a reason to have their paddle in those tournaments necessarily, other than typical local tournaments that are PPA.
Yeah.
sponsored.
And even on the amateur side, I don't know if you've played in PPA and APP, but APP is usually like actually much better organized. They may not be quite
That's
as
what I've heard,
large,
yeah.
but for amateur, they just run really smooth. They're really nice.
Yeah.
And they don't have the top level pros, but I almost wonder if this all goes through and to the point where they say even to play an amateur PPA and MLP, you got to have UPA approval, but USAP is still around. I almost wonder if this would push APP to be a little bit more successful in the amateur scene, which could be cool to have an even more amateur focused large organization like APP, because they do it really well and it kind of goes under the radar. So anyway, I don't know. All that to say is there's still too many shoes to drop, so we shall see.
Yeah, lots of speculation. None of this is even remotely close to being finalized. So just wanted to get your initial thoughts on it.
Yeah.
It's very weird. Speaking of things that just suck, why can anyone not make a good ball? Like what?
Oh, yeah.
Like this is
God.
kind of no one can make a good ball. Like the new Vulcan ball apparently was trash at last weekend's tournament.
The old
So
Vulcan ball
before
was
we
trash
get kind of
before
oh yeah, but I think potentially this new one could be worse just based on like all the pros' reactions.
Yeah.
You saw Colin Johns and Ben Johns freaking out, dude.
Yeah, cussing at the ball.
Yeah. This ball sucks. Yeah. Oh my god, that was awesome. But okay, so before we get into the debacle, if you will, what is your favorite ball and why?
Totally depends on the season. So, because I play only outdoor, so I'm not spoiled.
All right, no non-answers. Gun to your head, one ball. What would you pick and why?
Right now, Gamma
Anytime,
Chuck.
doesn't matter. Gamma Chuck, okay. I've never played with that, so I can't.
Yeah, so if I had
Why
to
is
pick
that?
one ball all year, only outdoor, because it plays decently in the summer, doesn't crack quickly. It's pretty hard in the winter, but it's not quite like Dura Selkirk hard, right? So, I mean, this sounds like a cliche, but it's kind of the space in between the Franklin X40 and then the Dura and Selkirk. Yeah, but it's also bright yellow, which the lights at the court that I play at are kind of garbage. So when you play with a Selkirk or a Dura, and then I have glasses also, I'm hopeless. It's like if I ever had fast hands, I definitely don't anymore because I can't pick up the ball. But if we play with the Franklin,
So we need to play with a Gamma Chuck at Houston, is what you're saying?
Well, it's indoor, so the lighting should be good.
Okay,
And also if it's indoor and they like keep it below 75, Franklin's still pretty slow, but it's actually fine. It's a pretty predictable ball. So
yeah.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I like Franklin's in the winter. Like we're talking below 55 degrees or below 60 degrees. Franklin's fine, totally fine by me.
Yeah.
What about you?
I would say, real quickly, I think that Selkirk balls are hard for about 2 games. Or they're firm for about 2
okay,
games,
what
and then
you're
they're
saying.
completely soft.
But then they're wobbly.
So, yes.
Yeah,
Don't even get me started on Selkirk ball.
I don't like
Hate
it.
that ball.
Yeah.
I play with it only because it does not crack. That is the only reason why I have Selkirk balls, is because I don't feel like buying a million balls. I generally like to play with Franklin X40s. I don't care if it's 95 degrees outside or 45 degrees outside.
Well, you play inside though, right? And what's the temperature in there?
No,
normally?
I play outside and inside. I play everywhere. I don't care if the ball's soft. I think you can still generate enough power.
Yeah,
in
it's
pickleball
predictable,
with an
right?
X40.
Which is,
Yeah.
I think it's worth.
But yeah, that's the thing. I would rather a ball crack and stay round and be predictable and know where it's going to bounce, and be soft, than be a fast ball that never cracks, but you have no idea where the ball is going to go or when it's going to have a crazy bounce.
I agree completely.
And that's the Selkirk. Sometimes the Dura has an interesting bounce. Very rarely, much more rare than the
It just
Selkirk.
cracks.
But it cracks like fast, and
Yeah.
it cracks humongously, like from hole to hole. We were playing the other day, and the ball was fine, and then 2 points later, it was cracked hole to hole. Never have I seen a ball crack hole to hole that fast.
Honorable mention,
But
the Gearbox GB1. Have you played with that?
have not. No,
Great ball.
I played so.
Right speed, stays round, but cracks fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So it's just
That's
like
the thing. You
like
can
a Dura,
either
but better.
have a round ball that cracks, or you can have a ball that takes stupid hops that doesn't crack as fast, or in Selkirk's case, doesn't crack for a very long time. So
We have to try the new Franklin.
why?
Franklin Eco.
Yeah, I played with those the other day. In the 95-degree heat, it was fine.
I haven't played with them yet.
I'm not a little baby, man. I hit hard, dude.
Not me.
I'm just kidding.
I got
don't
no
hit that
power.
hard.
That's why I'm on the right.
Yeah. But what the hell is the problem, dude? Why can no one make a good fucking ball? Like,
Plastic.
it pisses me off. Yeah.
I mean, soft enough to not crack, then it's so soft that it plays so slow or it goes out of round. Hard enough, to play faster, then it's going to crack. So, I mean, however, there are almost infinite different ways you can combine different polymers to make different plastics. So somebody will get there. I did play with a prototype ball from a company I can't say yet, and it was pretty good. Although I only played 2 games with it. So any ball can be good for 2 games, right?
Was it the owl ball?
No, I haven't played with that one yet.
Yeah.
That's the new official ball of APP now. Did you know
Well,
that?
it's the official ball of APP, but not the official ball of APP.
Oh, of APP UTR and APP, et cetera, right?
It's some weird, designation. Like,
Yeah.
Very,
But
very
speaking of
interesting.
that, you said Al because they make quiet paddles. You and I have talked about this off air. I think the quiet paddle thing is so stupid. And when this was
Dumb.
a couple months ago, I was in the USAP equipment standards meeting with all the manufacturers, and I asked a question that didn't get answered. They were talking about quiet paddle certification, the testing for quiet paddles, and I was like, what? They also, by the way, USAP approves balls, so that's the context. I said, why don't you make a quiet ball, certification? And wouldn't it be way easier for everyone to transition if there was a quiet ball rather than a quiet paddle? So then you could use your same paddles and either play with normal balls or the quiet ball. So anyway, that's my thought. And I think it's possible. I think that's totally doable, and I think it's way smarter than being like, oh, I have my regular paddle and my quiet paddle. Why wouldn't you just have your paddles and then you play with the quiet ball if you're in a neighborhood that requires it?
Yeah, you buy 4. Not really the library balls. Librarian balls? Is that what they're called? Library or librarian?
I don't know, but I know what you're
From,
talking about. That's a gamma ball too, right?
Yeah, they're not good. They're not good.
No,
They don't
not
play
quite
like
that.
a real pickleball.
Not quite
Yeah.
that, but I think it can be done. And
Yeah.
anyway, I think that would be a much smarter implementation. It just wouldn't make as much money because then you couldn't sell people
Yeah.
2 paddles, So
I just think that everybody's trying to make pickleball paddles when everybody should be trying to make a good pickleball that doesn't crack, that stays round.
no,
And
it
that is
won't matter because
medium in hardness.
the thing with the balls though is once you get to a certain level, everyone wants to play with something they know or something that's going to be in their upcoming tournament, right? And how a ball gets to be a tournament ball is that company pays a shitload of money to the tournament. So, so no new small company, even if they came out with a perfect ball, you might get pockets of people who love it and play with it, but it likely wouldn't ever become like the tournament ball. So a majority of people wouldn't start playing with it because it would be a small company that wouldn't have tons of money. But
Yeah,
that's just
I've
my
always
thoughts.
thought that people put way too much stock into things like that. And even like I do video production for a living. I always thought people put too much stock into what cameras they utilize for films as being the best cameras that you can use
I see what you
when
mean.
that's only a good tool for that one specific thing, whereas same thing with this, like, paddles and balls. Like, people think they see Selkirk and they're like, oh, Selkirk makes the best paddles because they have the most sponsorship, the most sponsored pros, and that's not the case. People just like adopt this mass use ideation, if you will. Like, this is what they use in the pros. This is what the most people use. It's the best. Whereas, there are much better products for much lower prices or even more competitive prices, and I feel like people need to adopt more on performative based rather than marketing and, pro playing, especially in pickleball, because
How
that's
dare
just
you?
the way that the technology is,
How dare
Yeah,
you
how
expect the
dare
general
I?
public to be critical thinkers
Yeah.
and metrics based?
Yeah, that's a
And
really good
merit-based.
point, actually. I'll never talk about that again because that's never going to happen.
This is a niche. This podcast and our
yeah.
listeners are a niche of the nerds, who like to
Yeah.
critically think and deep dive and stuff. But
Yeah.
most people don't like that. So
Yeah. Well,
don't,
speaking of
aren't capable
deep
of it either.
dives, yeah. Speaking of deep dives and metric base, let's talk about paddle modification recommendations. So last episode, I went on a deep dive of how you can modify your paddle, but I didn't really go into like recommending how you should, or what are the recommendations to achieve X performance. But to keep it pretty simple, I think we should very quickly touch on how to make your paddle more powerful, then how to make your paddle feel more stable, and then go into our recommendations or how we like to set up our paddles. But really quickly, just going to bring the Shogun. If you want to make your paddle feel more powerful and have more plow through, you can put weighted tape on the top of the paddle above the balance point. Is generally going to add more swing weight to it. It's going to make it more head heavy and then therefore have more weight at the tip, which is going to make it hit the ball a little bit harder. So if you want to have your paddle be a little bit more stable, you're going to kind of start just below the balance point on the edges of the paddle. That's going to increase the twist weight of the paddle and make it feel more stable and forgiving and slightly open up the sweet spot. You can put it kind of down here as well. It's going to make the paddle more excuse me. If you put it below here, it's going to make the paddle more heavy and therefore will feel a little bit more stable and have a little bit more plow through, and less, all over the place.
You won't change the balance much if you put it there. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, you won't change the balance much, but people, there has been this thought process that that's a bad spot to put your tungsten weight. It's not a bad spot. It's just not as optimal if you want to increase your twist weight, which is a fad that people have been going towards. I guess a fad is a bad word for it, but it's like it's kind of the ideal modification metric that people have been attaining to improve,
Yeah.
and less so on the swing weight. So don't think that putting lead tape or tungsten weighted tape in the throat of your paddle is bad, because people tell you to kind of do it in this optimal area, which is above the cheeks, as you say.
Yeah.
Kind of right here, at the 4 and 8 o'clock positions of the paddle. That's the most optimal place to put to increase your twist weight without increasing your swing weight as much. So,
Min-maxing.
and the reason,
Yeah.
the reason, sorry, I might have, probably said that wrong. But the reason why you want to put it above the corners, the bottom corners right here, is because, as we learned in a couple podcasts ago, the wider you place that tape, the more it impacts the twist weight. Same as with swing weight. The higher up on the paddle, or the further it is from the balance point, the more it's going to affect the head heaviness and swing weight. So, couple of just real quick, interesting ways to change your paddle's performance. Justin, you have probably had an extreme amount of experience with modifying. Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and just kind of give us a little bit more insight on maybe your recommendations and any deeper dives. You can take us to Nerd Town, bro. We're 52 minutes in. So,
we're not going to Nerd Town on this.
Keep it brisk.
We've beat this one down. I will say though, like you were saying, the throat's not useless. I think the throat's a perfect place whenever people like the way that their paddle feels, but it's just too light for them. So maybe their timing's off. They're ahead too much on the ball. Just put a little weight on the throat. It adds a little stability. It doesn't really change the balance of the paddle, so it still has a very similar feel. It's just a little heavier, which is nice, actually. Sometimes to have a little bit heavier, it can help your timing. And that is similar to tennis. And speaking on that, here's one thing I will say. This is the only little paddle I have right now, but I generally... But yeah, this is the Mark 1/2. Still over here on my desk. Hey, I've been gone for a week and a half, all right? Leave me alone. And anyway, I actually usually right here, like right above the butt cap, I wrap lead tape around, usually like 2 passes. It usually ends up being like 9 grams. And that's like, I love doing that. And because when you hold the paddle, for me at least, this is like dead center of my hand. So it's going to technically be the least noticeable place that you can add weight, and it will not increase swing weight, or it will, but such a minuscule amount that you barely even see a change even on the machine. But for me, I do like my paddle a little heavier. I'll get up close to 9 ounces, but I don't like a head heavy paddle. And that was the same from when I played tennis. I used to play with what they call players rackets, which were fairly heavy rackets, but they were very head light. So I just like that same feel on a paddle. Add a little weight right in the middle of my hand, and then it's, quite flicky. So, which I really enjoy. And, that's becoming a thing now. You see products coming out with weighted butt caps, and everyone's like, this is revolutionary. It's like, dude, just pull your grip off and wrap some lead around it. It's not revolutionary. And everyone right now is talking about, like, just taping quarters right here. Yeah, slice. Like getting 1 or 2 quarters, and they just like literally tape it over the end of their butt cap for weighted butt cap instead of buying one. Also, another reason I like doing it is because I like my flare on the butt cap to be a little bit wider. So I wrap the tape right around the bottom of it, and it just I hold it like this a little bit. Like, cause for me, I hold this butt cap's like in the middle of my hand, and I have pretty big hands, so I like for it to be wider. Anyway, that's something I do. As far as like recommending to people, it depends on how advanced of a player they are. It depends on their complaint with the paddle. Of course, like you said, if they're like, it just doesn't hit hard, I'm like, well, try some at the very top. And especially if there's someone who's maybe lower level and they're not really engaging in hands battles a lot, then who cares if it makes it a little slower, a little higher swing weight. But if someone's a higher level player and they don't know how to modify, the first thing I'll tell them is like 4 and 8, like you said, like right above the cheeks.
Yeah,
that's just easy to do. It makes a noticeable difference on the paddle right away in a lot of the right ways. So anyway, and
absolutely,
I think handle weighting is not for everybody, but something that if you are a tinkerer and you have the capability and the time, you should try, because it does change the feel.
Yeah, for pretty much the majority of people, I tell them the first recommendation I have is, as you can see on this slice right here, it's just kind of goes down this corner right here. The reason why I tell them go with that, because it's going to increase your twist weight enough,
Significantly.
but it's not
Awesome.
going to. Yeah, I mean, it'll your twist weight's going to probably bump up like 0.5, which is a pretty massive jump, or zero point 0.4, which would, in this case, this was 6.6 and it went up to 7.04 or something like that. But it only increased the swing weight by like 1.5 points. So
Yeah.
that I don't like paddles going over 120, and I would love them to be around like 116, 117. This was 116 stock, and I think this is 117.5 ish, like this. So that's always my first recommendation. A lot of people really love low swing weight paddles, but if you look at the pros, I bet you there's not a single pro that uses a paddle under like 115 swing weight.
Yeah.
They all put so much weight on their paddle because it helps with overall stability, power, and forgiveness. So I mean,
Clearly they're fast enough.
Say that again.
I said clearly they're fast enough, like they're not
Yes,
worried
exactly.
about slowing themselves down.
Yeah, they don't have to worry about having slower hand speeds. But I would say really anything like 118 and under, you're probably going to have fast enough hands. Just my opinion, unless you're just a very slow person in terms of reaction, which is, in that case, you'll definitely need a lighter paddle. So that's my first recommendation for sure. What I personally have been doing a lot of, I like to, this is 6 inches of 1 gram per inch tungsten tape, coming about halfway up my J3K Pro and going all the way to almost the grip of the throat on both sides. And then I have 3 grams of lead tape on this side of the handle and 3 grams of lead tape on the other side of the handle. So I think that's a total of like 18 grams total
Chunky.
of lead. So
That's probably almost a 9
yeah,
ounce paddle
it's a
too,
little
right?
chunky. Yeah, I think it's like 8.7.
Yeah.
But the swing weight's only like 115 or 116. So that is kind of ideal for me. I would rather have a heavier paddle that has a lower swing weight, just because at the end of the day, I mean, this is something that took me a long time to understand and realize, but the heavier your paddle is, the more it's going to just resist the ball pushing it around and, make it feel more stable and forgiving and sturdy. So more of a feely type thing than a metric and data-based thing. But
Speaking of that,
that's kind of how
I was going to say, I've done quite a few paddle fittings for people who maybe aren't paddle nerds, so they don't understand all these numbers. So essentially, I think I told you this before, what I'll do is kind of set up a paddle for them. They'll play with it and be like, I like this about it, but I don't like this. But they won't say, I don't like the weight. I'll say, like, what's your favorite thing about it? What's your favorite shot with it? What's your least favorite shot with it? And then I'll move weight around and keep going. Usually it takes like 2 or 3 rounds until I find like a weight setup that, they love. Anyway, interestingly enough, like the swing weights usually land almost always like 117 to 120. Everybody, all different types of players too. Strong players, and then women, men, younger people, older people, and usually people like their twist weight around 7. So it's not a surprise. That's kind of the sweet spot. There was one person who I was shocked by. His paddle ended up being like 9.6 ounces. And
Dang.
the twist weight was like 7 the twist weight was like 7.9, and the swing weight was like 122.
Oh my God.
But
Dang.
his hands are so fast. It's crazy. His hands are still that fast with that paddle. It's a lot of handle weighting, of course, but like he's approaching a 10-ounce paddle. It's crazy. So, but that's an outlier. But of course, you can't go wrong with something in the 116 to 119 and about 7 twist weight. 7 to 7.2. Honestly, we sort of mentioned this, but once you go beyond like 7.2, 7.5 twist weight, that hurts your maneuverability.
That was something I mentioned in the J2K versus Ruby video a couple months back. I noticed, because they're very similar paddles, Same length, same width apart from the taper. And the only real difference was the twist weight on the J2K was like massively higher. So we're talking 6.4 versus 7.1. So that's 0.6, which is a humongous difference and very, very noticeable. But what I noticed was how much quicker my hands were with the same swing weight paddles. The swing weight was exactly the same, which is what everyone utilizes as the metric to measure hand speed. But I noticed it was way harder to manipulate the paddle at the kitchen line with the J2K. And I would say way harder. I mean, it's like barely harder. Let's be honest here.
What's called noticeably.
Yeah. Noticeably harder. Nothing that is going to be detrimental to the game. But I could notice immediately a difference in hand speed. So twist weight 100% affects your hand speed as well. Yeah. So something that the graffiti guy, I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you read that article I sent you?
I did. I read it. I glanced through it. I think I was on vacation whenever you sent it to me, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I can't remember what the metric that he used to talk about, spin weight, which is basically, And whenever you measure swing weight, you have the paddle vertically on the graffiti machine, and it goes, back and forth. But spin weight is whenever you have it, horizontal.
And basically
how much...
Yeah, that spin weight is usually, or it's supposed to be, your swing weight plus your twist weight. So in a higher spin weight. And this is something that they do in, tennis rackets, of course, is a measure of maneuverability. So a higher, like you said, same swing weight, but higher twist weight, you add those numbers together, you get a higher spin weight. It affects maneuverability. Yeah, so shout out to Brian from Graffiti. He's the one who makes the machines that we all use. Super smart guy, and you could go. It's on his blog on his website, graffiti.com. And then you could check out his blog about it if you want more info. And it was cool. It's a short read, but it has like every bit of information that you would need.
Yeah, and to hammer it home even more, I mean, just literally think about you're putting weight on the side of the paddle. So the heavier something is in the direction that you're twisting it, the harder it is going to be to twist it, even if there is a counterweight, So there, you definitely can't have too high of a twist weight, which was the question, the title of the blog post, can twist weight be too high? Yes, of course. I mean, there's definitely the same thing as swing weight. Swing weight can be too high. It's completely personal preference, but those two things definitely do have both implications on how fast or slow your hand speed is. So,
did we make it?
I'm lost, man.
Did we make it?
We made it.
You're looking like it's the hour point.
Yeah, I'm losing it. I just got back from vacation at the beach, so
me too. Well, not the beach, but
5-hour drive. But had to get it in. There's nothing more important than the Pickleball Pursuit podcast. All right, guys.
Yeah, and it's only a week and a half till our tournament, so we only got one more episode before the tournament, and then the one after that we're going to do on site. We should probably, if we can swing it, we should probably do it after the tournament so we can talk about how badly we lost.
Oh yeah, and how many times we got pickled, and how we should be playing 3-0, and
Yeah.
But yeah, you ruined my joke. I was going to say, my daughter was like, "Dad, come to bed with me," and I was going to say, "No, listen, kid. I have more important things to do than spend time with you. I gotta be on a virtual call with a guy named Justin talking about pickleball paddles." I'm just kidding. I would never say that to my daughter. She is the most important thing to me in my life.
Yeah, sure.
But we'll definitely have to do an in-person podcast. Win, lose, or lose.
Yeah.
Probably lose. But watch us. I mean, how hilarious would that be if we somehow, like, some crazy miracle happened and we medaled or even won this?
I'll quit pickleball.
That's it.
That'll be my high point.
I'll never play again.
Yeah.
So, have you ever medaled?
No, I always play up and get smashed every time.
Yeah,
but my ego doesn't let me play down. So,
no, I played at my level multiple times, and I was just like, this is Not that fun. I would rather play up and play against better people and, test myself and see how well, we, we can do and know what I get picked on and become better. And I'd rather play a little bit up than down. You know?
I agree.
I know there's lots of sandbaggers out there that really.
So there's some money on the
I
line on
don't
this
give
one,
a
though.
Shit.
Since it's a money
I
ball
don't
tournament,
care.
we'll have to figure out.
Yeah.
What
Maybe we
do
can
with
just
it.
like ruin some people's, just people who are dying to get that win and just ruin it for them and be like, oh, we don't care about the money.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get me a
Go
better
give it to
camera.
some- Yeah,
you know,
that's right. We'll
for
get
the
you another
podcast.
camera. Yeah, we'll get you a better camera for sure. You
Or
gonna have
better
a good
light or
camera in
something.
person, that's for sure, boss.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
Look at this
we'll
lighting.
get you looking tight. We'll get you looking right. Yeah. But anyway, that's pretty much everything we have to talk about today. There was another thing we were going to talk about. We'll get that next time, guys.
Yeah, let's save it.
If you have any questions, be sure to hit them in the comments section below. We didn't have too many questions that needed to be answered on the podcast from last week's. I did my best to answer all those in the comments section below. So feel free, any questions you have, put them in the comments section below, whether for me or for Justin. Justin, appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming back. We missed you last week. Until the next one, I'm Lewis. This is Justin. This is the Pickleball Pursuit Podcast. We'll see you next week. Bam.